watch movies by zombies, walk the streets and it's work. It's like y'all worship inflation, let it live and it hurts. Israel copping oil, stolen by ISIS. Hypocrites and leaderships are honeycomb closets where my angels.
See, that would be a terrible mistake if you're going to destroy a movement. Rothschild claimed to be Jewish. Not the nationality of a Jew, but Jew in terms of belief in God and a follower of divine revelation. But was Mr. Rothschild a moral man? Here's a man that had 5 sons, and he sent his 5 sons into 5 countries. 1 son went to England, 1 son to France, 1 to Austria, 1 to Italy, and another remained in Germany with the father. And from these sons and the money that these sons had, they worked and maneuvered and manipulated until they gained control of the central banks of England, France, Austria, Italy, and Germany. The control of these central banks went into the hands of individuals whose interests were not necessarily in harmony with the best interests of that nation. These privately owned central banks became the printer of the money and the extenders of credit of that particular nation. So government and politics, I wish the politicians didn't have to go. I wish the politicians didn't have to go. But I understand you're very busy. Government and politics in Europe was always controlled by the money interests. Wars were fought, and in order to fight a war, governments had to borrow money. They borrowed money from these central banks. The central banks waxed rich because they loaned money and charged interest, then took over when one side prevails against the other. And when governments could not satisfy the indebtedness, then some of the natural wealth of that country flowed to the bankers. They would loan money to both sides in the conflict because they really didn't care who won or who lost. I mean, it's hurtful, but a Jew, Rothschild, loaned money to Adolf Hitler. A Jew, Rothschild. God damn it, you better not open your mouth to call me no anti-Semite. Did you know that 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons? Now, I'm going into your secrets for a minute. Not you, Black Mason and Shriner. You don't have any secret. It's the white Masons and Shriners that we're going to expose in a minute. And listen to this. At least 9 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons. George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, James Monroe, John Jay, John Hancock, Paul Revere, John Paul Jones, and James Otis. Later on in 1870, out of Freemasonry came a higher order of Masons called the Shriners. Now the difference between Masons and Shriners is that to be a Shriner, you must be a master Mason in good standing. Now, those of you who don't know anything about this, just hold your seats. I'll get back to you in a second. A Shriner belongs to the ancient Arabic order of the nobles of the mystic shrine. But wait, what kind of language is that? And all their temples or mosques are named after cities like Mecca, Medina, Syria, Aleppo. These are all parts of the Muslim world. So Arabic is in their name to describe the nobles. And a noble is a hereditary class that has special social, political status in a country or state. And all white Shriners have an exalted or noble political and social status in America and nations throughout the world. Now they talk about this mystic shrine, meaning that there's some mystery attached to the shrine itself. And what is a shrine? It's a sacred place of worship associated with a holy person or a holy event, a container for sacred relics such as the bones of a saint, the tomb of a holy place, person, or other revered figure. Well, who is the saint that is entombed in the shrine? Oh boy. Who is that holy person whose bones are in that shrine? It's not just the bones of an architect of King Solomon's temple. No, that's cheap stuff. What is entombed in the shrine are the bones of those who are connected to the originator, and with him are the architects of that which you call universe and all therein. Now, this holy person is now entombed in mystery, meaning that there's a secretive knowledge of that tomb that is only given to those who are master masons. These people are called Muslim Shriners or Muslim sons. We get a question in our lesson: why does Muhammad make the devil study from 35 to 50 years before he can call himself a Muslim son and wear the greatest and only flag of the universe? Why must he add a sword on the upper part? Oh yeah, there, but make it big, man. Let the people see what I'm talking about. Now you have to remember, this question is put to us by Master Farad Muhammad. And if you notice all the Shriner temples, you see that crescent, that star with a sword over it. You think they don't know Islam? Well, now, if you look at this sword is over it, meaning that any time that any Shriner reveals the secret of what's in that tomb, they would pay with their lives. Rothschild and Paul Warburg loaned money to Hitler. Hitler killed little Jews, while Rothschild and Warburg stayed in the finest hotels in Europe. But damn it, if you can't call Rothschild anti-Semitic and Warburg an anti-Semite, then don't you open your mouth against me. In a book titled None Dare Call It Conspiracy by Gary Allen and Larry Abraham on page 45, the question is asked, where do governments get the enormous amounts of money that they need? Most, of course, comes from taxation. But governments often spend more than they are willing to tax from their citizens, so governments are forced to borrow. The public is led to believe that the government borrows from the people through savings bonds. Actually, only the smallest percentage of the national debt is held by individuals in this form. Most government bonds, except those owned by the government itself through its trust funds, are held by vast banking firms known as international banks. For centuries, there has been big money to be made by international bankers in financing governments and kings. Such operators, however, are faced with certain thorny problems. We know that smaller banks operate to protect themselves by taking collateral. But what kind of collateral can you get from a government or a king? The process through which one collects a debt from a government or a monarch is not a subject taught in the business schools of the universities. And most of us, never having been in the business of financing kings or governments, have not given the problem much thought. But there's a king financing business. And to those who can ensure collection, it is a lucrative business. An economics professor named Stuart Crane notes that there are two means used to loan governments money to governments and kings, and two means of collecting on that money. Whenever a business firm borrows big money, the creditor obtains an influence in management to protect its investment. Like a business, no government can borrow big money unless that government is willing to surrender to the creditor some of its sovereignty. Certainly, international bankers who have loaned hundreds of billions of dollars to governments around the world command considerable influence in the policies of such governments. But the ultimate advantage, listen to this, that the creditor has over a king or a president is that if the ruler gets out of line, the banker can finance his enemy or his rival. Therefore, if you want to stay in the lucrative financing business of kings and governments, it is wise to have an enemy or a rival waiting in the wings to unseat every king or every president to whom you lend money. If the king doesn't have an enemy, you gotta be able to create one. Well, what is the secret of the ancient Arabic order of the noble of the mystic shrine? It is you. It is your destiny. It is your future. It is your origin that has been kept a secret from you, but was known by the founding fathers of this country and known by the present day rulers. Now I want you to listen good. Elijah Muhammad said, you are the direct descendants of God himself. I'm going to say it again. You are the direct descendants of the originator of the heavens and the earth, and you are the natural Khalifa of God himself. Listen, listen. It is Arabic they use because Arabic is the original language of the Asiatic black man. This black man, direct descendant of the originator of the heavens and the earth, and in him is the knowledge of how to build not a temple, but a new heaven and a new earth. They look at black people and know who we are. Yes. This holy person was hit in the head by 3 ruffians, Jubilah, Jubilo, and Jubilam. And when he was hit in the head, he was carried to the north country and buried in a shallow grave with a sprig of cassius coming up from the grave to let the world know that there's life down here. But who can get up the man in the tomb? Nobody but one with a master grip. Nobody but one with a lion's paw. The Bible says there's a lion asleep in Judah. Who will wake him? No pussycat can wake up a lion. And this pussycat leadership will never wake the black man up. You're too weak in your effort to free our people from the hand of the oppressor. Now I'm going to show you why America is in so much debt. The founding fathers of this nation said they did not want private control of a central bank because to them such a bank would be the detriment of this democracy. Thomas Jefferson saw a privately owned central bank as worse than an opposing army. Thomas Jefferson wanted to keep America free from those things that led to the destruction of many nations and governments in Europe. And so a privately owned central bank was unthinkable to the founding fathers of this nation, and therefore it was written in the Constitution that only Congress should have the right to print the money and the instruments of credit. The debt of America is so great that greater hardship is now being planned by the government for the masses of the American people in order to make America solvent. please, wake yourself up now. Come on. Come on. If you got to stand up and breathe, stand up. Stretch yourself. I'm winding this down, so come on, I don't want you to sleep now. Give me some water. Are you all right? Okay, sit down. You refreshed? Good, I am too. Let's get rolling. The great sweep in the November elections that brought the Republicans into the control of the Senate and the House of Representatives and the majority of the governor's mansion of this nation sent a message to the government that the American people are greatly disturbed over the course of this nation, and they all are seeking change. The majority of the American people may not know what change they want, but they definitely desire change for the better. The Republican Party has come up with a theme. They call it a contract with America. This contract or agreement is to reform the government in such a way where great amounts of money can be saved, spending is to be brought in line, taxes are to be reduced. But this contract with America, to many seems, in gangster terminology, to be a contract on America, where the contract says the poor and the weak must be eliminated. There is no way that the Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, or Senator Dole, or the Republican Party can solve the problem of the tremendous debt of this nation without exposing the root of this problem and the conspiracy that brought America to her wretched debtor condition. Every home needs a balanced budget. A balanced budget means that we do not spend more than we take in or have debt greater than our ability to handle without over borrowing that will destroy the economy of our homes. Serious financial problems are at the root of most of our domestic quarrels. The tremendous stress on the breadwinners in the American family is such that this stress leads to spousal abuse. Women abusing the men, men abusing their wives, the abuse of the children, the breakup of the family. So balancing the budget at home is one of the keys to a stable family environment. Since this is so in individual homes, it is also true in the larger context, the country, the nation. The nation called America is going toward $5 trillion in public debt. This debt is so great that in order to balance the budget, such drastic cuts have to be made that the poor and the weak will suffer the most. So this contract with America is a contract on America's poor. Even the thought of raising the age level at which time the elderly will receive Social Security to 70 years of age is a sign that the Social Security of those who have paid into it is in deep trouble. The government, if it raises the age limit to 70, is betting that most of those who paid into this fund will never live to see 70 years of age, and therefore Social Security will not have to be paid. Thank you. This one is really a metaphor. It is an allegory. It is a fable that describes something that has happened to a real person. One who is a direct descendant and has in his DNA that potential of building a new heaven and a new earth. His name is Hiram Abiff. Hiram in Hebrew means a noble one. He was a noble. He was a holy person. And in the story, they put him to death. And they buried him in the North Country, North America. He's buried here. But he can be revived. The secret of Hiram is the power of the enemy through the Freemasons and the Shriners to lock down the black man and make sure that he never rises. The Masons and the Shriners, the white ones, are like that stone that was at the tomb of Jesus to keep Jesus from rising, but an angel came and rolled the stone away, and when they looked, he had risen. Keeping the secret of who the black man is was the duty of every white Mason, not the black Mason or Shriner, because you were never told that the secret was all about you. The white Masons and Shriners have always known the secret from Europe to America. In Europe, a Freemason understands the degrees and what it is to be a master Mason. They know something of the African origin of civilization, the advancements in Egypt, and the great architectural genius of the black man. They learned all of that through their study of the original Bible, which has always been locked away among the aristocracy. Common people could not read the Bible. But the people rose up and wanted to know what was in that book. So King James commissioned a group of 47 scholars. Some believe included William Shakespeare, to rewrite the Bible and give it a diluted version, so that the common people who did not know science would never be able to know the truth that was hidden under allegories, metaphors, figures of speech. Think about the wisdom of the people who adulterated or changed the Bible. Think about the language and its use of allegories with the imagery of animals, birds, and fish to describe another reality. All this is to hide what is really in the scriptures. These 47 scholars knew the sciences. They knew astronomy, they knew botany, biology, zoology, chemistry, physics. They knew these things because all of the scriptures are rooted in science. They use language that the little man could never unravel. But in their attempt to deceive the masses, they got themselves confused. And now they don't even know what the book means. It took the coming of God to unravel its meaning for us. Otherwise, to eat it, you'll be poisoned by it. You will think you know what you know not.
and you will worship that of which you have no knowledge.
You know, the president just sent a budget up to Congress of $1.6 trillion. Yet, in 1991, the last year that we have knowledge of what America took in taxes, America took in a little over $1 trillion in taxes. Which means that if the budget this year or next year is going to be $1.6 trillion, then where will the $600 billion come from to satisfy the budget? At this rate, if America cuts taxes and yet is increasing its budget, by the time Clinton leaves office, if he only has one term, the country will be $6 trillion in debt. At $4 trillion in debt, to pay the interest on that debt in 1991 was $288 billion, nearly 1/3 of what the government took in taxes. If the debt reaches $6 trillion, practically every penny that comes in tax revenue will have to be paid to service the debt, which technically means that the country will be bankrupt. This condition of great debt has placed America at the mercy of those to whom she is indebted. On page 47 of this same book, They Dare Call It Conspiracy, by Gary Allen and Mr. Abraham, it reads, listen, quote, "Since the keystone of the international banking empire has been government bonds, it has been in the interest of these international bankers to encourage government debt. The higher the debt, the more the interest. And nothing drives governments into debt like a war. And it has not been an uncommon practice among international bankers to finance both sides of the bloodiest military conflicts. For example, during the Civil War, the American North was financed by Rothschild through their American agent, August Belmont. And the American South was financed through the Erlangers, who were Rothschild's relatives. But while wars and revolutions have been used by international bankers in gaining or increasing control over governments, the key to such control has always been control of money. You can control a government if you have that government in your debt. A creditor is in a position to demand the privileges of monopoly from the sovereign. Oh man, this is heavy stuff. Governments that are seeking money have granted monopolies in state banking, natural resources, oil concessions, and transportation to the bankers. However, the monopoly which the international financiers most covet is to gain control over a nation's money. Eventually, these international bankers actually owned as private corporations the central bank of various European nations. The Bank of England, the Bank of France, the Bank of Germany were not owned by their respective governments, as almost everyone imagined. They were privately owned monopolies granted by the head of state, usually in return for loans. Under this system, observed Reginald McKenna, president of the Midlands Bank of England, he said, quote, "Those that create and issue the money and credit direct the policies of government and hold in their hands the destiny of the people."
Go ahead.
Now, most of you think, most Americans think, that the Federal Reserve banking system is owned by the federal government as the representatives of the American people. But the Federal Reserve Bank is a privately owned banking institution. On page 59 of this same book, it reads, "The Federal Reserve controls our money supply and interest rates and thereby manipulates the entire economy, creating inflation or deflation, recession or boom, sending the stock market up or down at whim. The Federal Reserve is so powerful that the former Congressman Wright Patman, who was the former chairman of the House Banking Committee, said, in the United States, we have in effect two governments. We have the duly constituted government, then we have an independent, uncontrolled, uncoordinated government in the Federal Reserve System, operating the money powers which are reserved to Congress by the Constitution. Neither presidents, nor congressmen, nor secretaries of the Treasury direct the Federal Reserve. In the matters of money, the Federal Reserve directs them." This was written about 30 years ago. Well, is it so today? Recently, the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board, Mr. Alan Greenspan, came before Congress to hint to the Congress that the Fed would raise interest rates again. So for the 7th time in a year, interest rates have been raised. The chairman of the board of General Motors and Ford is now seeking an audience with Mr. Greenspan to plead with him not to raise the interest rates any further. And if Mr. Greenspan agrees, this will be the first time, according to what we have read, that the Federal Reserve has agreed to sit down directly with the heads of business. The Federal Reserve sits down with the heads of government.
Go ahead, Minister, go ahead.
Why would business plead to the Federal Reserve not to raise interest rates? Why couldn't Congress order the Federal Reserve not to raise the interest rates? If you watch Congress, when they deal with Mr. Greenspan, they don't play with him, because Mr. Greenspan is the representative of a shadow government that literally dictates the monetary policies of this nation.
On the wheel, and weed ain't made for smoking, just sip it when you ill. You ain't got eczema, you got parasites and candida. 16 shots, Chi-Town versus punk baby killers. Homicides justified cause they left the guard. Pimps trap the hoes, cause the hoes love they rod. Fear death, live in fear, say that's life is stupid. I fear none but Allah, snatch a gun, try to use it. Y'all saying how he do it, I tell you it was him. Put a smile on his face when I chose not to sin. Watch movies by zombies, walk the streets and it's work. It's like y'all worship inflation, let it live and it hurts. Israel copping oil, stolen by ISIS. Hypocrites and leaderships, a honeycomb closets where my angels.
See, that would be a terrible mistake. If you're going to destroy a movement for some money, that's your burial insurance. That's when you deserve to die.
Peace don't even need you. If you don't want peace, then peace will leave you. If you don't chop back, the beast will chop at you. And the best way to chop is to unite with all the truth. Poor whites are scared cause their country going to hell. As if our blood didn't fertilize this land, do tell. Your father died in the basement, Hurricane Sandy. His boys told him clocking or that he would lose that money. Hate the world, man, that's the juice, we need to fix it. What you got to lose, that's your mama in the prison. Punks be acting like the victory was indicted, but we could charge you for booking like a punk while we was fighting. Planned Parenthood killed 4 million babies, but wasn't that supposed to prevent the abuse and death of babies?